Hello, and welcome to R.Ed TV, Real Education Television, where we talk about real learning, real education, real teaching, and real results. I'm so excited to have Dr. Zakia Gates with us today. Zakia, tell us more about your educational background.
Sure. As you said, my name is Dr. Zakia Gates, and I just recently obtained my PhD in Professional Studies in Education K through 12 from Capella University. I have 22 years of experience as a classroom teacher in the K through 12 context, and out of those 22 years includes 5 years in higher ed as an adjunct faculty member, one being with Capella University, and within those 22 years, and the 5, I also have 7 years working in the Juvenile Detention Center, which was called Vision Quest some years back. So also was an educational specialist there, director of education, and then I became a classroom teacher in the juvenile justice system as well.
Well, Dr. Gates, I'm very, very excited about you being here. One of the reasons that I wanted to talk to you is because you are from Cabrini University. And of course, I graduated from Cabrini College. Tell us a little bit about your background in terms of being a Black intellectual. One of the ideas that I've been toying with is that there aren't enough Black intellectuals leading our children in today's urban educational world. Tell us about your quest to help young people understand their background.
I think the key word that you said was quest. And I like that terminology because it is a quest. It's a lot of hard work in order to get to that particular path. However, being in a school now in an urban setting where it's pretty much racially mixed, I am the only, and I want to see easily identifiable Black teacher, Black intellectual who was currently there. And I do get treated by the children a little bit differently than other teachers, where I sometimes have teachers tell me, well, how come this child does for you and they don't do for me? How come this child can do this for you and doesn't do this for me? And sometimes it can be a little hard to answer that particular question. However, what I do in my classroom, I bring in a lot of cultural relevance into the classroom. As a matter of fact, my students who are just 6th graders, I always bump them up, so I always have very high expectations. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of schools are missing, are those high expectations. So being that Black intellectual, I have to be twice as good, twice as better, because of the quote unquote standard that's already there, thinking that I will not be able to do that type of work with the kids. But just, this past week we're working on vocabulary development. And a lot of the vocabulary, I always tell my kids afterwards what the grade level is for. I never tell them that it's on their grade level. I always go grade level or 2 up when it comes to them. And with the Black and the white and the Hispanic children in my classroom, I always put up 3 sentences, and I have the words in context. And one of the words was apparel, which was a 7th grade word. And I said, okay, I'm not going to write some plain sentence that we may see in other books for apparel. So I said, let me talk about Trayvon Martin in this particular sentence. So my sentence was, many people often felt that Trayvon Martin's apparel is what caused his death in 2012. So I took the chart paper down and I had the kids look at that, and they were looking at it, having these faces like, what does she mean by that? And just from that, they pretty much could define the word in context. They knew exactly what I meant by that. And I just got a little deeper into it. So I said, okay, apparel is clothing. I wrote over my chart. It is clothing, but what type of clothing could have possibly, according to what people assume, caused his murder? And then, surprisingly, a lot of Black kids, they knew. They raised their hand immediately. And they said, it was the hoodie. And sometimes I wear a hoodie to work, where it says Black Scholars Matter on my hoodie. And when they see that, they're like, Dr. Gates, what does that mean? Is it always about, and I have to always explain that to them. But when I explained to them about the hoodie, the Black kids and even the white kids were very curious about, why does that happen? And it just caused a whole different type of conversation.
Enter.
So on a daily basis, where could someone find you and your work? Where do you work on a daily basis from day to day?
Well, from day to day, my work is primarily doing a lot of research and just keeping abreast about the constant things that are going on in our world constantly, because everything in the world impacts education. A lot of people don't like to discuss that part because we're so worried about what Trump is doing and what's going on here and what's going on. But all of that he's doing does impact education, particularly when you promote someone to Secretary of Education who's never been within that context of education, probably just an elementary school girl herself.
Right.
So that name will remain, we know who we're talking about, but
Yes.
within that particular, context. But everything in our world impacts education. So I'm always reading articles. I'm always reading certain types of books. The book I'm reading right now is by Dr. King, which is called Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community. And that's where we are right now.
Excellent.
With a lot of chaotic things that are going on in education. So.
I know that we both know Dr. Gloria Latson Billings.
Yes.
She was the one who came up with the idea of cultural relevance.
Yes.
And in doing my research, I see that she defined it in three ways. It helps students to achieve, it helps students to understand who they are culturally, and it helps students to think deeper and critically conscious about their world. How do you address those ideas in your work, if not just one of them? How do you delve into helping the students understand their cultural relevance?
The way I do it is through empowerment, because that's another thing that Gloria Langston Jones also talked about. But if I could just sum up all three, what you just talked about is more so empowerment, and education should equal empowerment and vice versa. Because the real purpose of our educational system right now is about getting test scores up. I think the real purpose of education is to lead those out of ignorance. So that's why I had the whole Trayvon Martin sentence up there for the kids. But as far as her work is concerned, one way I've done that in my classroom is I use a hip-hop STEM, a hip-hop epistemology. That's what I use. So one lesson that I had to do was on prepositions. And prepositions, can be the most boring concept of grammar that you could ever think of. And I never like to start out with a definition of what a preposition is. I like to go into example. So I did my research on Gloria Langston Billings and others as well, where I used this hip-hop epistemology where I said, okay, why not have images of hip-hop artists that they know about? And I mean black, white, Hispanic. This is what they all listen to all the time, to explain what prepositions are and what their purpose is. Mm-hmm. So I said, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to use two white theorists, and I'm going to mix it with hip-hop into this lesson. And I know Piaget always said that children learn best through language and literacy, through visual, and what they see, along with Howard Gardner as well. So I used hip-hop, and I had an image of Drake on my Promethean board. And he had on a chain, he had on a hat, he had on the earrings and things of that nature. And I said, I want you to identify all the items on Drake right now. They were able to do that like that. I said, next, I want you to, with the items, write in a sentence where those items are located on Drake. And they start to list it. And I said, okay, let's talk about it. Where is his chain? Oh, his chain is around his neck. I said, where is it again? Around. Oh.
Yeah,
I
right
said,
there.
That's your preposition. I said, the preposition shows the relationship between this and the relationship of the noun. I said, so when I gave them an assessment 2 weeks later, no one got below a C. So that was all with culture, because I wanted them to feel empowered, that they see themselves and what they listen to on a daily basis inside the content.
It's extremely inspirational to hear you speak like that. Really, because as an English teacher and a grammarian, I've been trying to teach prepositions for many years, and it always falls flat.
Yeah.
But this is another way of looking at it in terms of cultural relevance. And when you speak of Dr. Howard Gardner and his multiple intelligences, That's another way to tap into our young people and let them know that all of you have some sort of intelligence that makes you great in and of yourself. So you can be an artist and be learned. You can also be a musician and be learned.
Yes.
You don't always have to be an academician, although that is my favorite. I'm just saying.
Right.
I am not against the other types of passions that are out there, and I use those to get the students excited. That's fantastic. That's wonderful. Let me ask you a little bit about the term cultural relevancy in terms of how you have seen that in your own life growing up. You are where you are at this moment from studying who and in what way and because of. So what I want to do is just delve into your background to see how you were able to come to the place that you're at right now. What I'm looking at is the idea that our Black children do not have enough representation in terms of being Black intellectuals. We are Black intellectuals as we study Caucasian people. However, the work that you're doing, I see you're flipping the script. You're bringing Black intellectuals in to teach children how to be Black intellectuals. That's not how I learned. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about that.
Okay, you mentioned the word script. And I recall Paulo Freire said that education is suffering from narration sickness, which is that script that we always have to go through every single day, the curriculum down to the lesson and into the classroom. But as far as my background is concerned, I saw no indication, no evidence of cultural relevance whatsoever. And I went to a racially diverse school, K through 8, but I went to a predominantly African-American high school. And still with that, I still never saw that relevance. But cultural relevance to me means that you make a reference to the student's culture in order to get them to understand the content of what's going on in front of them. So I never saw that. So when I became a teacher, I said to myself, I would never do that because I didn't feel empowered in school. I just knew my mother and father said, you go, you learn, you leave. You go from that particular point. So I never saw any evidence of cultural relevance whatsoever. So this is why I'm so passionate about the work now.
For you to be able to be where you are in the mindset that you have, most of that is because of your own passion in reading and learning. Tell me some of the books that you've read that you feel like have brought you to where you are right now.
Sure. The autobiography of Malcolm X. A lot of readings of Marcus Garvey. My great-grandfather was a Garveyite.
Right.
The book I'm reading now by Dr. King, which I never knew anything about this book until Roland Martin from TV1 brought it up. So that's what brought me into a certain level of consciousness. Having wonderful parents who always placed a Black history book on my bed all the time, and all the books that we had in the house, even with my own daughter, all the books we have in our house currently. And I teach her to read from certain cultures as well, but make sure you stay within.
Make sure you stay within.
Yes,
that's true.
First,
very good.
Which is first and foremost.
I would be a whole different person right now had it been if I had a teacher like you. The only teachers I saw like you were my parents. So in order to understand cultural relevancy, I had to go home, right? That was not in the classroom, and especially wasn't at Cabrini College.
Right.
Not that I didn't learn a whole lot at Cabrini College, and then did my master's work at Kutztown University, which was also culturally irrelevant. I did not understand how anybody outside of my home could understand who I was as a person. So I was forced to just learn the scraps that I was taught. But the essential meat and potatoes was at 409 South Lansdowne Avenue. When you think about your history in education and your work, that what you're doing right now, who do you think you're influencing, and how do you want them to move forward with that?
Well, hopefully I know that I'm influencing the younger generation, because I feel as though in this era that we're currently living in right now, a lot of them are very socially conscious,
Right.
but no one is encouraging or enhancing it in the classroom for them to elevate their social consciousness from this level to this level. And I think because in between those gaps is a fear of a younger generation becoming socially and critically conscious about what's going on. So this is why in my classroom, and I keep my door shut a lot, and the kids say, okay, I know what she's doing. So, as a matter of fact, one example could be this. We just got over PSSA. And prior to PSSA, we were told to show these videos, these 3 inspirational, motivational videos to the kids. And part of my fault was not viewing the videos before I showed it to them. So I admit that fault.
Mm-hmm.
And when I showed the 3 videos, I'm sitting in the front of the classroom, and my head was to the floor. And I said, okay, I can't watch anymore. Because of this, one of my female students, she raised her hand. And she said, Dr. Gates, may I ask you a question? And I said, sure. And I paused it. And she said, how come there are no females in these videos?
Well.
And the same thing that I was thinking at the floor was the same thing she said. So it was some type of connection or energy through the floor that we felt that connection. And I said, wow, I see the same thing. Mm-hmm. And we had this whole conversation about empowering the female and how even in education they try to assassinate the female character and image every day.
Every day.
And we had that whole conversation. So that's why I bring it to my classroom. And so we didn't watch another video after that.
No, that's
that
the end of that. That's the end of that. And so I grew up learning about Maya Angelou. When I think about what my mother taught me as being a Black woman, I understand the strength that she passed on to me. I remember the time that I met Maya Angelou, actually, and I felt very empowered. Once I met Maya Angelou and saw the power between her and my mother, I thought to myself, there are no other people I'd like to be like except for these 2 women. One thing that I am very intrigued by, however, is mentorship. With you being a role model in all cultures, your idea of being a Black intellectual is pervasive. Because not only are you teaching young Black people to love themselves, you're teaching other people outside of the culture to love us as well. Okay? So now my work, although it's not in the urban classroom anymore, it's outside of our culture. And I'm teaching Caucasian people to understand my culture better, so that when they meet us on the street, they have compassion. That's important. Talk a little bit about that. What are your thoughts?
Well, I always felt as though that's where it can take place, is right there in the classroom. We can have these conversations all day in our homes. However, I think it also has to deal with this whole model of how does society implement these ideologies and attitudes towards other people of color, and how that's also integrated in the media, and then it comes into the microsystem of the classroom and how students actually come at each other. There have been a couple times where I've heard some racial slurs, from student to student, and then I have to interject myself to even speak about those type of things. But I think it's very, very important to bring that cultural relevance so that all cultures are able to understand, especially in the era that we're living in right now, that they're very much able to understand this culture from this culture, and just because this culture does something different doesn't make it a deficiency. And I always tell my students a difference is not a deficiency, and then vice versa. That's how we see disability sometimes when it comes to special needs and special ed and things of that nature. I never believed in disability. I've always thought, okay, if you're in a wheelchair, that you have a disability.
Sure.
But I never believed in an intellectual disability. If you're able to process information, you're an intellectual. And you're able to interpret and analyze certain things, you are an intellectual.
I understand you did some work in juvenile detention centers. Tell me a little bit more about that work.
Okay, no problem. In the juvenile detention center, I started as an education specialist, where basically I would just get, the transcripts and make sure they had enough credits for graduation. The education in that particular center, that alternative setting, as opposed to the setting where I'm in right now, there was no curriculum.
Right.
So I had a little bit of freedom, even though I was being watched, but I had a little bit of freedom.
Right.
But I could teach them in a context of, this is why you're here. This is what is designed to happen. And I mean, and it was primarily boys, primarily young black males who got into trouble. We get that. I understand it. Took responsibility for it. But they were here in this particular type of setting. So that gave me the opportunity to elevate their level of consciousness so they would not come back, even though maybe a few did come back. But I actually had to explain them using a model, and I drew the whole model. And I use the same model when I teach higher ed. And they were able to understand, okay, now I get it, why we are here. So I said, if you know why you're here and you know it's designed for this to happen, even though you do hold some type of responsibility as well, what are you going to do after that?
What will you do
What will you do so that you don't come back here? Because I love you, I don't want you to come back here. So that's the difference there. In the urban setting where I'm at right now, there's a curriculum. And I might as well just say a script.
Sure.
There's a script. And I never believed in having a script before I had my actors. I believe in seeing the actors and seeing what role they fit for that particular script. So I will do the curriculum. It's fine, and I understand the standard that I have to follow because I have to keep a job. However, at the same time, when I have the curriculum, I toss it to the side, and then I just go from there. I have to see my students first.
Absolutely.
To see what fits for them, because every curriculum does not fit every child at all. So that was the difference. There was a little bit of freedom here, maybe not as much. So I knew what to say when certain important people came to the door to watch, and then we just got into something else. But in this setting right here, it's too scripted, and I need some type of academic freedom because I think that's what education is. It should be of freedom.
Absolutely.
To lead those out of ignorance.
Right.
So that's why you let out of ignorance is if you're free. You feel free within.
Making the students culturally conscious and giving them a voice will help us in the long run.
Yes.
When you think about you being a teacher in the urban classroom, what are 3 ideas that you can give to the audience in terms of keeping their classrooms culturally responsive?
I brought this up in a master's level course at Cabrini University, my first course, and it was called Philosophical Foundations in Education. And my class was 15 students, so 13 of them were Caucasian and 2 were black. And I told the class, I said, when you return in September, you want to keep your classrooms culturally relevant, and you have to go to the teacher store, the teacher supply store to buy your posters. Just look at the images. So make sure that you are very much aware of the images that you are using. Regardless if you have a predominantly Caucasian class, make sure you have different images of cultures and races and ethnicities and genders in your class, because we always leave out gender sometimes. But make sure you have these different images within your classroom. That's first. The second thing is, and I can use this example from a white female teacher when she told me the story, real quick story, but she was explaining to me how a young black girl, one of her students came up to her and started to feel her long blonde hair. And she just told the teacher, "Oh, you have beautiful, beautiful long blonde hair." And I asked the teacher, I said, "Well, what did you say?" She just said, "I just said thank you." I said, "Why don't you tell her hair was beautiful too?" So that's one thing that you have to do as well, because it's almost implying, not saying, implying that my hair is beautiful and your hair is not. So just being connected with your students in that way as well. And I believe the third thing is to always ask your students, what stuck with them today. I always say put chart paper up, give them a sticky note. They love sticky notes. And have them go up before they leave the classroom. What stuck with you today?
It's fantastic.
As to what we went over when it came to this particular lesson about cultural relevance. How do you feel? Give them a voice.
Dr. Gates, one of the ideas that I see that's amazing for you and your work is that you teach at Cabrini University in professional studies and education. So you're able to teach teachers how to teach in classrooms, and I think that that is magnificent. One thing that's amazing as well is that you're able to use that work on a daily basis in your teaching in classrooms. You teach at a charter school. Tell me about that.
Yes, the charter school is called First Philadelphia Charter School in the Northeast section of Philadelphia, and I teach 6th grade students reading and language arts. And within that particular context, I have to say that there are times where I have noticed a difference when students come to me and when they go to other teachers, because as stated earlier, I'm the only easily identifiable black teacher of the entire middle school. And one of the things that I have seen with some of the black students, not all the black students, but some of them, has been like this resistance, this backlash towards me. And I don't take it as a personal attack. However, I do understand that I'm probably the only professional, mature, intellectual person that they see on a daily basis. basing that on probably where the social economic status to which they currently come from, where they're not used to seeing that type of person.
Sure.
And it goes back to hundreds of years ago when they implemented this thing called the inferiority complex that so many blacks have had in this country based on this whole ideology that blacks are not as intelligent as other cultures and dominant cultures as well. So that is still very relevant today, and it resonates today in our schools, and it impacts them a lot. So just assuming that when I get some of this resistance when I'm going over certain things, and I don't teach history, but I implement a lot of Black history within the content. And the Hispanic students get excited about it. The Caucasian students get excited about it. Some of the Black students are like, it's this attitude almost. And when I get that, I know what that is. So I don't take it as personal as I think other probably, people would take it as personal. But I know what it is. It's, wait a minute. I've always been told that I can't do anything. And this person is a reflection of me. So I know if I don't know anything, what is she to tell me anything? So I'm going to be disrespectful. I'm going to sit in the back. I'm going to distract. I'm going to bother everyone else. I'm going to get up when I want to get up. So I have seen that, and I've seen with some of the white teachers in the school, some of the students are a little bit different. And I still push. You push back, I keep pushing.
Your students are lucky to have you. Understanding the idea of your students being able to bring in different cultures into the classroom and go anywhere in the world through books, through videos, through the internet, and the purpose being that at the end of all of the lessons, we understand each other better and we understand how close we are in humanity. We're very thankful to have you on R.Ed TV, Real Education Television.